March 16, 1968. A routine U.S. Army mission over Vietnam takes a horrifying turn. As pilot Hugh Thompson Jr. flies over the village of My Lai, he spots something unimaginable. American soldiers mercilessly gunning down unarmed civilians, women, children, and elderly, all being slaughtered in cold blood. Thompson faces an impossible choice. Should he ignore what he sees, follow orders, and fly away? Or should he do the unthinkable, stand against his own army to stop the massacre? This is the incredible true story of a man who risked everything to do what was right. To understand this story, we need to go back to the Vietnam War, a brutal and controversial conflict that lasted from 1955 to 1975. The United States was involved to stop the spread of communism in North Vietnam. But the war became a nightmare for both soldiers and civilians. American troops were sent into Vietnam with the promise of victory, but the reality was far from it. The enemy, the Viet Cong, blended into the civilian population, making it impossible to tell friend from foe. Many American soldiers lived in constant fear of ambushes, booby traps, and guerrilla attacks. As frustration grew, so did brutality. The line between combat and massacre started to blur, and My Lai became one of the darkest chapters in U.S. military history. On the morning of March 16, 1968, Charlie Company, led by Lieutenant William Calley, was given orders to raid My Lai. The soldiers were told that the village was filled with Viet Cong fighters and their sympathizers. But when they arrived, there were no armed men, only civilians. Despite this, the soldiers, many of whom were already traumatized by war, began an hours-long killing spree. They dragged villagers from their homes, executed men, and shot women and children. Some were brutally beaten. Others were forced into ditches and gunned down in groups. It was not a battle, it was an extermination, and it continued for hours. Flying above the village in his observation helicopter, Hugh Thompson Jr. and his crew Glenn, Andriata, and Lawrence Colburn were assigned to scout enemy positions. But what they saw below was not a battle. It was a massacre. They watched as soldiers executed unarmed civilians, burned homes, and even shot those trying to escape. Shocked and horrified, Thompson knew he had to do something. He landed his helicopter near wounded civilians, hoping to get medical aid for them. But to his horror, he saw American soldiers walking toward them, guns raised, ready to finish them off. That's when Thompson made a decision that would define his life forever. Thompson positioned his helicopter between the soldiers and the remaining civilians. He stepped out, furious, and demanded that the soldiers stop immediately. When they ignored him, he did something unthinkable. He ordered his own machine gunners to aim their weapons at the American troops. "Stop the killing, or we will open fire." In that moment, Thompson was no longer just a pilot. He was a man standing alone against the might of his own army. His crew was terrified, but they followed his orders. The soldiers hesitated, and finally they backed down. Thompson and his crew then began rescuing survivors. They airlifted as many villagers as they could to safety, making multiple trips to ensure no one was left behind. But when Thompson reported what he saw to his commanders, he was met with disbelief silence. The army tried to cover up the massacre, claiming it was a battle against enemy forces. Official reports described it as a victory. However, the truth could not be hidden forever. A year later, an army photographer, Ron Hebrel, released horrifying photos of the massacre to the press. The world was outraged. Protests erupted across the U.S., and pressure mounted for accountability. Finally, the U.S. military had no choice but to investigate. After intense public pressure, only one person was held accountable: William Calley, the man who led the massacre. He was found guilty of murdering 22 civilians and sentenced to life in prison. But shockingly, his sentence was later reduced to just 3 years under house arrest. And what about Hugh Thompson? Instead of being rewarded for his bravery, he was treated like a traitor. He received death threats from fellow soldiers, was harassed, and was even advised to keep quiet about what he did. For years, the army ignored his actions. But the world did not forget. Decades later, Thompson was finally honored for his courage. In 1998, he and his crew received the Soldier's Medal, the highest award given for bravery without engaging in combat. He was also recognized by Vietnam as a hero who saved lives in one of the darkest moments of the war. Hugh Thompson Jr. passed away in 2006, but his story remains a lesson in morality, courage, and the power of standing up for what is right. So, what do you think? Was Hugh Thompson a hero for stopping a war crime? Or was he a traitor for pointing guns at his own troops? In a world where following orders is expected, Thompson chose to follow his conscience instead. Comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more incredible stories from history.